Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us has had moments where life feels stagnant, moments where we long for a reset, a second chance, a new chapter. The good news is this: God sees your desire for a fresh start. He not only sees it, but he celebrates it. The God who created the heavens and the earth is the same God who knows the depths of your heart. He sees the pain you carry, the mistakes you've made, and the dreams you've set aside. But he also sees your yearning for something new, something better, something aligned with his divine purpose. God is the master of new beginnings. From Genesis to Revelation, his word is filled with evidence of this truth. When humanity fell, God initiated a plan for redemption. When the Israelites were trapped in Egypt, he parted the Red Sea to lead them to freedom. When the prodigal son returned home, the father ran to meet him with open arms. These aren't just stories, they are divine declarations that God delights in giving us a fresh start. But let me remind you, a fresh start begins with faith. Faith is the currency of heaven. It is the bridge that connects your desires to God's promises. You may feel unworthy or inadequate, but God is not looking for perfection, he's looking for surrender. When you trust him with your desires, he turns them into opportunities for transformation. God knows your heart. This truth is foundational to understanding his love and purpose for your life. Often people focus on outward appearances, actions, or circumstances to determine someone's worth or potential. But God goes beyond the surface. He sees the deepest parts of you, your intentions, your struggles, your unspoken prayers, and even the desires you're hesitant to voice. He knows the complexity of your journey, the battles you've fought, and the dreams you've yet to fulfill. You may feel misunderstood by others or even question your own worth at times, but God's perspective is different. He isn't limited by the external or the temporary. While people may judge by what they see, God evaluates the heart. Your struggles, doubts, and even your failures don't disqualify you from his love or his plans. Instead, they position you to receive his grace. When you desire a fresh start, it isn't just an emotional longing, it's a divine signal. That desire didn't originate with you, it was placed in your heart by the one who created you. Philippians 2:13 tells us that it is God who works in us to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. That means your yearning for renewal is not a random thought, but a part of God's plan. It's his spirit stirring within you, preparing you for what's ahead. God's knowledge of your heart isn't just a matter of awareness, it's a reflection of his care. He sees the pain you carry, the hopes you hold on to, and the questions that keep you awake at night. When others dismiss your struggles or fail to understand your aspirations, God pays attention. He doesn't just see your actions, he understands your motives. He knows when you're trying to do the right thing, even if you fall short. He knows when you're striving for change, even if progress feels slow. This understanding is why you can approach God without fear of judgment or rejection. He already knows everything about you, and yet he loves you completely. His love isn't based on what you've done or failed to do, it's rooted in his unchanging nature. Because of this, you can trust him with your deepest desires and your greatest fears. You can bring your brokenness, your regrets, and your dreams to him, knowing that he sees it all and still chooses to work in your life. God's knowledge of your heart also means he knows the perfect way to guide you into a fresh start. He understands what you need when you need it and how to bring it to pass. Sometimes the path to renewal may seem unclear, but you can trust that he is orchestrating every detail. Your job is not to figure everything out, but to stay connected to him, trusting that he knows what's best. So when you feel the desire for a fresh start rising within you, don't ignore it. See it as a confirmation that God is at work. He sees your heart, and he's ready to do a new thing in your life. Trust him with the process, and you'll find that his plans for you are greater than anything you could imagine. A fresh start is in God's nature. From the very beginning of creation, God has demonstrated that he is a God of new beginnings, renewal, and restoration. His character is woven into the fabric of second chances, showing us time and time again that no matter how broken or hopeless a situation may appear, he has the power to make all things new. Consider the creation story itself. Out of chaos, darkness, and void, God spoke order and life into existence. He didn't see the formless earth as a lost cause. Instead, he saw its potential. With his words, he created light, life, and beauty. This same creative power is at work in your life today. When you feel like your world is in chaos, God is not overwhelmed by it. He specializes in turning voids into something vibrant. Throughout the Bible, we see his nature of renewal unfold. When humanity fell into sin, God didn't abandon his creation. Instead, he set a plan of redemption in motion, a plan centered on giving us the ultimate fresh start through Jesus Christ. Noah and the ark, Abraham and the promise of a new nation, the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, and the restoration of exiled Israel are all examples of God stepping in to provide new beginnings. These stories aren't just ancient events, they are reflections of God's ongoing work in our lives. His desire to give you a fresh start is part of his eternal nature. He doesn't simply offer a reset as a last resort. He delights in renewing his people. Lamentations 3:22-23 reminds us of this truth. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Every day is an opportunity to embrace the fresh mercies that God freely provides. But what makes a fresh start so powerful is that it's not just about a clean slate, it's about transformation. When God gives a fresh start, it's not to return you to where you were, but to take you somewhere greater. It's a shift that aligns your life with his divine purpose. He doesn't merely erase your past, he redeems it. He turns your pain into purpose, your failures into lessons, and your brokenness into a testimony of his grace. It's important to remember that a fresh start is not something we can achieve on our own. It is rooted in God's power and grace. We can strive and struggle, but true renewal comes when we surrender our lives to him. When we trust him with our broken pieces, he begins a work that no human effort could accomplish. Even when you feel undeserving or disqualified, God's nature doesn't change. He isn't limited by your past mistakes or your current circumstances. He sees the end from the beginning and knows exactly how to guide you into the future he has prepared. All he asks is that you trust him and take the first step. God's nature of renewal assures us that no situation is beyond his ability to transform. No matter where you've been or how far you feel from your purpose, God is ready to do a new thing in your life. Trust his nature, lean into his promises, and let him lead you into the fresh start he has prepared for you. Your desires for a fresh start often align with God's purpose for your life. This connection is not accidental but intentional, as God himself plants those desires in your heart to draw you closer to his divine plan. When you feel the need to break free from old patterns, leave behind failures, or step into something new, it's a signal that God is at work within you, shaping your destiny and calling you toward his greater purpose. Philippians 2:13 tells us, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." This verse reveals that God is not only involved in your outward actions, but is actively influencing your inner will and desires. Your yearning for a fresh start is a response to his prompting. It's as if God is whispering to your spirit, reminding you that he has more in store for you and that he's ready to guide you into a new season of purpose and fulfillment. Many people believe their desire for change stems from dissatisfaction, failure, or restlessness. While these feelings may contribute to the need for a fresh start, the root of that desire is often divine. God created you with a unique purpose, and when your current circumstances no longer align with that purpose, he stirs your heart. He uses that sense of longing to draw you out of complacency and into alignment with his will. This is why it's so important to examine your desires through the lens of faith. Not every desire comes from God, but when your longing for a fresh start leads you closer to him, reflects his character, and aligns with his word, you can be confident that he is the source. God's plans for you are always good, and his purposes are designed to bring glory to his name while fulfilling your life in ways you could never imagine. Aligning your desires with God's purpose requires trust and surrender. It's tempting to pursue a fresh start on your own terms, trying to force change in your own strength. But true transformation happens when you allow God to take the lead. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Your role is not to figure everything out, but to trust that God is working behind the scenes to align your desires with his perfect plan. God's alignment of your desires and his purpose doesn't mean the process will always be easy. There may be seasons of waiting, testing, or even pruning as he prepares you for the fresh start you long for. These moments are not meant to discourage you, but to refine your character and deepen your reliance on him. As you trust him, he will begin to reveal his purpose step by step, opening doors you couldn't open on your own and closing those that would lead you astray. When you recognize that your desire for a fresh start is a reflection of God's purpose, it changes your perspective. You no longer see your longing as a sign of failure, but as an invitation to partner with God in the journey of renewal and transformation. Trust him with your desires, seek his guidance, and embrace the fresh start he has prepared for you. Every setback in your life is a setup for a comeback. This truth reveals the heart of God's redemptive nature and his ability to turn even the most painful experiences into opportunities for growth and restoration. Life is filled with challenges, disappointments, and moments that leave us feeling defeated. But with God, no setback is wasted. Instead, each one becomes a stepping stone toward the greater purpose he has for your life. When we look at the stories of the Bible, we see this principle in action repeatedly. Joseph, for example, experienced betrayal by his brothers, slavery in Egypt, and wrongful imprisonment. From the outside, his life appeared to be a series of devastating setbacks. But in each circumstance, God was working behind the scenes to position Joseph for a greater purpose. In time, Joseph rose to become a leader in Egypt, saving countless lives during a famine. What his brothers intended for harm, God used for good. The same pattern is evident in the life of Job. He lost everything: his wealth, his family, and his health. Yet in the midst of his suffering, Job remained faithful to God. And in the end, God restored him, blessing him with more than he had before. These stories remind us that setbacks are not the end of the story, they are the foundation for the comeback that God is preparing. Your own setbacks may come in various forms: failed relationships, lost opportunities, financial struggles, or personal mistakes. In those moments, it's easy to feel like giving up or believing that you've been disqualified from God's plans. But nothing could be further from the truth. Romans 8:28 assures us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This means that even your worst moments can be used by God to bring about something good. The key to turning a setback into a comeback lies in your perspective and response. First, you must trust that God is still in control, even when your circumstances seem overwhelming. Faith is the anchor that keeps you steady when the storms of life threaten to pull you under. Second, you must resist the temptation to dwell on the past. While it's natural to grieve losses or feel regret, holding on to those emotions can prevent you from moving forward. Instead, ask God what he wants to teach you through the setback. Often, the most significant growth in our lives comes from the lessons we learn during difficult seasons. A setback can refine your character, deepen your faith, and prepare you for the opportunities ahead. Lastly, remember that God's timing is perfect. Your comeback may not happen overnight, but it will happen in God's appointed time. Trust that he is orchestrating every detail, opening the right doors and closing the wrong ones. And when the time comes, your comeback will not only restore what was lost, but also position you to fulfill God's purpose in a way that brings him glory. So don't let your setbacks define you. See them as part of a larger narrative, a story in which God is the author, crafting a testimony of resilience, redemption, and victory. With God, every setback is simply a setup for the incredible comeback he has planned for your life. Trust him and step boldly into the new chapter he is writing. Faith is the key to unlocking a fresh start in your life. It is the bridge between where you are and where God is leading you. Faith is not just a mental exercise or positive thinking. It is a deep, unwavering trust in God's promises, even when circumstances seem to contradict them. It is the confident assurance that no matter how difficult or uncertain life appears, God's plans for you are good, and He is working all things together for your benefit. When you desire a fresh start, it's natural to feel overwhelmed by doubts or fears. You might wonder if you're capable of change, if it's too late to begin again, or if God is truly willing to intervene in your situation. This is where faith comes in. Faith is what allows you to move forward, even when you don't have all the answers. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It means believing in the reality of God's promises, even before they materialize. The Bible is full of examples of how faith activates fresh starts. Think of Abraham, who left his homeland and everything familiar to follow God's call. His faith was not in his own abilities or understanding, but in God's promise to make him the father of many nations. Despite his age and the impossibility of the situation, Abraham trusted God and stepped into a new chapter of his life. His faith wasn't perfect. He had moments of doubt, but his willingness to trust and obey opened the door to God's blessings. Consider the woman with the issue of blood in the Gospels. She had been suffering for 12 years, trying every possible solution without success. Yet her faith led her to believe that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be healed. Her faith was the catalyst for her fresh start. Jesus affirmed her faith, saying, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace," Luke 8:48. Her story reminds us that even in desperate situations, faith can lead to transformation. Faith, however, is not passive. It requires action. James 2:26 tells us faith without works is dead. This doesn't mean you earn God's intervention through your actions, but it does mean that true faith compels you to take steps forward. For example, if you're seeking a fresh start in your career, faith might lead you to pursue training or apply for opportunities, trusting that God will guide and open doors. If you're longing for a fresh start in a broken relationship, faith might compel you to reach out, forgive, or seek counsel. Faith involves both trusting God's sovereignty and partnering with Him in obedience. It's also important to remember that faith is a journey. It doesn't mean you won't face doubts or challenges along the way. What matters is that you keep trusting God, even when the path seems unclear. Your faith doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be present. Jesus said that even faith as small as a mustard seed has the power to move mountains, Matthew 17:20. When you exercise faith, you align yourself with God's power and promises. You acknowledge that your fresh start is not dependent on your strength, but on His. Faith empowers you to see beyond your current circumstances and walk boldly into the future God has prepared for you. With faith as your foundation, you can embrace your fresh start with confidence, knowing that God is faithful to complete the work He has begun in you. To embrace a fresh start, you must let go of the past. Holding on to the weight of past failures, regrets, and disappointments will hinder your ability to move forward into the new season God has prepared for you. Letting go isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about releasing its hold on your present so you can fully embrace the future. God's word repeatedly encourages us to let go of what lies behind and press on toward what lies ahead. In Isaiah 43:18-19, God says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it?" This is a powerful reminder that God's plans for you are forward-focused. Dwelling on the past can blind you to the new opportunities He is placing before you. The past has a way of creating strongholds in our minds and hearts. Mistakes can lead to shame, broken relationships can cause bitterness, and missed opportunities can fill us with regret. These emotions are natural, but if left unchecked, they can become barriers to your growth. God doesn't want you to live imprisoned by what went wrong. Through His grace, He offers you freedom. Consider the story of Lot's wife in Genesis 19. When God was delivering her family from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, she was instructed not to look back. Yet she turned around longing for what was behind her and was turned into a pillar of salt. This story serves as a warning. Looking back can freeze you in place, preventing you from stepping into the future God has for you. Letting go requires intentionality. First, it involves forgiveness both of yourself and others. Forgiving yourself means releasing the guilt and shame associated with your past mistakes. It's acknowledging that God's grace is sufficient and that He has already forgiven you. Forgiving others means releasing the anger or resentment you may feel toward those who have hurt you. Forgiveness doesn't excuse the offense, but it frees you from carrying the burden of bitterness. Second, letting go means surrendering your past to God. You may not understand why certain things happened or why some prayers went unanswered, but trusting God means believing that He can use even the most painful experiences for your good. Romans 8:28 assures us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. When you surrender your past to Him, He can turn it into a testimony of His faithfulness. Third, letting go involves shifting your focus. Instead of replaying past mistakes or dwelling on what could have been, fix your eyes on God's promises. Philippians 3:13-14 encourages us, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize, for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Focusing on what lies ahead helps you realign your thoughts and actions with God's purpose. Remember, letting go is not a one-time decision, it's a process. It requires daily surrender and reliance on God's strength. As you let go of the weight of your past, you'll find that your hands are free to receive the new blessings and opportunities God has prepared for you. Trust Him, release what no longer serves you, and step boldly into the fresh start He is offering. A fresh start requires courage and trust in God's timing. The journey to something new often feels uncertain and even intimidating, but it is in these moments that God calls you to step out in faith. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's choosing to move forward despite fear, trusting that God is with you every step of the way. When God leads you to a fresh start, it's often into the unknown. Consider the story of Abraham in Genesis 12:1-4. God called Abraham to leave his country, his people, and his father's household and go to a land that God would show him. Abraham didn't know where he was going or what the journey would entail, but he trusted God's timing and obeyed. His courage and trust led to the fulfillment of God's promise to make him the father of many nations. Abraham's story reminds us that stepping into the unknown with God leads to extraordinary blessings. The fear of the unknown is one of the greatest obstacles to a fresh start. You might find yourself asking, what if I fail? What if things don't turn out the way I hope? What if I'm not ready? These questions are natural, but they must be countered with the truth of God's promises. Joshua 1:9 declares, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you. Wherever you go, knowing that God is with you gives you the courage to take the first step, even when you can't see the whole path. Trusting God's timing is another essential aspect of embracing a fresh start. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. You may feel eager to move forward or frustrated by delays, but God's timing is always perfect. He sees the end from the beginning and knows the best moment to guide you into something new. Trusting His timing means being willing to wait when necessary and to act when He opens the door. One of the challenges of trusting God's timing is learning to discern His voice. Not every opportunity is from God, and not every delay is a denial. Spending time in prayer and seeking His guidance through His Word helps you recognize when He is leading you. Psalm 32:8 assures us, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. Courage and trust also require you to let go of the need for control. A fresh start often means stepping into situations where you don't have all the answers or the resources. This is not a weakness, it's an opportunity to rely on God's strength. Proverbs 3:5-6 encourages us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. As you embrace a fresh start, remember that courage and trust are fueled by God's presence. He is your guide, your protector, and your provider. When you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself of His promises and take the next step in faith. Trust His timing, lean into His strength, and watch as He leads you into the new season He has prepared for you. With God, your fresh start is not only possible, it's guaranteed to exceed your expectations. A fresh start is an opportunity to partner with God in creating a new chapter of your life. This partnership is not about you striving in your own strength to achieve something, nor is it about waiting passively for God to do everything. Instead, it's a dynamic collaboration where God provides the vision, power, and guidance, and you respond with faith, obedience, and action. God's desire for partnership with humanity is evident throughout the Bible. In Genesis, we see this from the very beginning. When God created Adam and Eve, He gave them dominion over the earth and invited them to cultivate and steward His creation. This wasn't because He needed their help. God is all-powerful and fully capable of accomplishing His purposes on His own. Rather, He delights in involving us in His plans, shaping us into His image as we walk in obedience and trust. A fresh start is no different. God initiates the process by stirring desires in your heart and opening doors of opportunity, but He also requires your active participation. This partnership is beautifully illustrated in the story of the Israelites entering the promised land. God promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, but they had to step out in faith to claim it. They had to march around Jericho's walls, fight battles, and trust God's guidance at every step. Their fresh start wasn't handed to them passively. It was realized through their willingness to follow God's lead. One of the key aspects of partnering with God is aligning your will with His. This requires humility and surrender, recognizing that His plans are higher than your own. Proverbs 69 says, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." You may have ideas about how your fresh start should look, but true success comes when you submit those plans to God and allow Him to direct your path. Another crucial element of this partnership is stepping out in obedience even when the way forward isn't clear. God often reveals His plan one step at a time, asking you to trust Him with the unknown. This is where faith and action intersect. For example, when Jesus called Peter to walk on water, Peter had to step out of the boat first. The miracle happened as he acted in faith, keeping his focus on Jesus. In the same way, your fresh start will unfold as you take bold steps of obedience, trusting that God will sustain and guide you. Partnership with God also means relying on His strength rather than your own. Zechariah 4:6 reminds us, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty." Your ability to embrace a fresh start doesn't come from your skills, resources, or determination alone. It comes from the power of the Holy Spirit working in and through you. God equips you with everything you need to succeed in the new chapter He's calling you to. Finally, partnering with God in a fresh start requires a heart of gratitude and worship. As you step into the new season, remember to acknowledge His faithfulness and give Him glory for every breakthrough and blessing. Gratitude keeps your heart aligned with His, reminding you that the journey is about more than personal success. It's about fulfilling His purpose and reflecting His goodness to the world. When you embrace the truth that a fresh start is a partnership with God, you step into a life of purpose, power, and possibility. Trust His plan, follow His lead, and watch as He works through you to create a new chapter filled with His grace and glory. In closing, a fresh start is not just a fleeting wish or a mere chance at change. It is a divine invitation to step into the fullness of God's purpose for your life. God sees your desire for renewal, and He is ready to guide you through the process of transformation. He calls you to let go of the past, to trust His timing, and to step forward with courage and faith, knowing that His plans for you are good. Every setback you've faced, every mistake you've made, and every longing in your heart has been preparing you for this moment. God's grace is sufficient, His power is limitless, and His timing is perfect. He is the author of fresh starts, and He invites you to partner with Him in creating a new chapter that exceeds anything you could imagine. So rise up with faith, align your heart with His will, and take the steps He is calling you to take. The God who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. Your fresh start is not just possible, it is certain. Because the one who holds your future is working all things together for your good. Step into this new season with confidence, knowing that with God, your best days are ahead.